Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist and today we're going to be doing a Colossal Fighter Assault Mode deck profile. So I'm really excited to do this for you guys because the last time I posted an Assault Mode deck profile, I asked you guys in that video if you guys would like to see a Colossal Fighter Assault Mode deck profile. And you guys let me know down in the comments with a resounding yes, you would love to see it. And so I'm excited to finally bring that deck to you guys. So without further ado, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards, like getting your name description every single video, getting get signed cards to the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month to your Patreon. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to be playing 2 copies of Colossal Fighter Assault Mode. You really only need 2 copies of this card, but it is an extremely powerful card that this deck can turbo out extremely easily. It has the ability, this card cannot be normal summon or set. This card cannot be special summoned except with Assault Mode activate. And when this card is special summoned, you can send up to 2 warrior monsters from your deck to the graveyard. And all monsters that your opponent control lose 100 attack for every warrior monster in your graveyard. And when this card on the field is destroyed, you can special summon out a Colossal Fighter from your graveyard, which is a great effect to be able to work with our Phantom Knight monsters to be able to just basically Foolish Burial 2 of them to the graveyard to get some really cool effects. We then play a single copy of Stardust Dragon Assault Mode. This card is super easy to put on the field, and it's just a really good one-up that we can put on the field to have an additional negate in the deck. We then play 3 copies of Psy Reflector. Psy Reflector is the main way that we're actually going to summon out our Assault Mode monsters, because it has the ability, if this card is normal or special summon, you can activate or you can add a Assault Mode activate, or one card that specifically lists Assault Mode activate in its text from your deck to your hand. You can send another copy of this card, which is a great effect to be able to add your copies of Assault Beast off this card's effect. It also has the ability you can reveal an Assault Mode activate in your hand, and then you can target one monster in your graveyard that specifically lists Assault Mode activate in its text, accept another copy of this card, and special summon it. And if you do, increase its level from 1 to 4, which we're usually going to increase it by 3 to make it a level 7 monster, to then synchro with Psy Reflector into a copy of either Colossal Fighter or Stardust Dragon, which is really cool. We then play 3 copies of Assault Sentinel. Assault Sentinel is basically 3 more copies of Psy Reflector, because it has the ability to contribute this card to be able to special summon one monster from your hand or deck that specifically lists Assault Mode activate in its text, except another copy of this card, which is essentially summoning out a copy of Psy Reflector. We then play a single copy of Assault Beast. This card is searchable in the deck off your copy of Psy Reflector. And it's just a really awesome card to be able to search off of Psy Reflector to be able to then discard and add Assault Mode activate from deck to hand. We then play for the Phantom Knights. We're going to be playing 3 copies of the Phantom Knights of Torn Scales. One of the best Phantom Knight cards in the game. This card is the ability you can discard a card and then send a Phantom Knight card from your deck to the graveyard, except another copy of this card. And if another Phantom Knight card is in your graveyard, is banished, while this card is in the graveyard, you can special summon this card but banish it when it leaves the field, which is a great effect just to get this card back on the field, especially when we're sending this and another monster to the graveyard off of Colossal Fighter Assault Mode. We then play 3 copies of Silent Boots. Silent Boots is a really good 3 of, because if you control a Phantom Knight monster, you can special summon this card from your hand, and it also has the ability you can banish this card from the graveyard to add one Phantom Knight spell or trap from your deck to your hand, which is going to help you out a lot to be able to grab some super powerful cards like Fogblade. We then play 2 copies of the Phantom Knight of Ancient Cloak. Ancient Cloak is a really good 2 of in the deck, but you only really need 2 copies of this card. It has the ability you can banish this card from the graveyard to add a Phantom Knight, or the Phantom Knight, excuse me, card from your deck to your hand. It has to say the Phantom Knight in the name. It has to have the, so some of the Phantom Knight cards are actually not searchable off this card's effect. But if this card is on your side of the field, in attack position, you can target a dark monster on the field, change this card to defense position, and if you do, that monster gains 800 attack and defense until the end of your opponent's turn, which is a pretty good effect to give you a little bit of a boost. We then play a single copy of the Phantom Knights of Ragged Gloves. This card is really good as a 1-of in the deck, because a Dark XZ monster that was summoned using this card on the field as a material gains 1,000 attack points, which is a pretty good effect. You can also manage this card from the graveyard to be able to send a Phantom Knight card from your deck to the graveyard, which is a pretty good effect to get the exact Phantom Knight card you need in the grave. We then play 3 copies of Tour Guide from the Underworld, one of the best normal summons in this entire deck, because this card lets us special summon a level 3 Fiend monster from our hand or deck to our side of the field, but its effects are negated. We then play a single copy of Graf Malebranche of the Burning Abyss. This card is really good in the deck because if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can special summon out a Burning Abyss monster from your deck except another copy of this card. But since Tour Guide negates its effects, it will only activate when it touches the grave, so it won't destroy itself by your Burning Abyss monster's effect. We then play a single copy of Seer. Seer is a really good 1-of in the deck as well, because if this card is sent to the grave, then you can target a Burning Abyss monster in your graveyard and special summon it, which is usually going to be your copy of Cherubini that you're going to special summon off this monster's effect. We then play a single copy of Skarm. Skarm is a good 1-of in this particular deck because during the end phase, if this card is sent to the graveyard this turn, then you can add a level 3 Dark Fiend type monster from your deck to your hand, which can be another copy of Tour Guide to be able to give you an additional normal summon during the next turn, which is really good. To be able to just get a copy of Tour Guide from the deck and use it on the follow-up play. So, that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to be playing a single copy of Rhoda. Rhoda is really good because all of our Phantom Knight monsters are lower than level 4, and they're all warriors. We then play a single copy of Foolish Burial. Foolish Burial is a great 1-of in this particular deck because this card is super helpful at basically sending any of our Phantom Knights that we need to the graveyard when we need it, then giving us a search off of some of their effects like our copies of Ancient Cloak or even Silent Boots. We then play a single copy of 1-for-1. 1-for-1 is really good in this particular deck because it lets us get to our copy of Sire Reflector extremely easily and is just a really good card overall in this particular deck because it also sends a monster from our hand to the grave, which can be really powerful in Phantom Knights. We then play 3 copies of Emergency Teleport. This is 3 extra copies of Sire Reflector because this card lets you special summon 1 level 3 or lower psychic monster from your hand or deck, which is always going to be your copy of Sire Reflector you're summoning off this card's effect. We then play 3 copies of Fire Formation Tenki. We do play some Beast Warriors in the deck, which is really nice for this particular build. And this card just helps you out a lot because it does get you directly to your copies of your Assault Sentinel, which is just such a good effect to be able to use Tenki to get to Assault Sentinel so that you can get to a copy of Sire Reflector, which is really good for this deck. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. So for the traps, we're going to be playing 2 copies of Assault Mode Activate. You really only need 2 copies of this card in the deck. It is extremely searchable, and it's just really good because it lets you tribute a synchro monster to be able to special summon an Assault Mode version of it from your deck and attack position, which is a great effect just to instantly get you an Assault Mode version of one of your really powerful monsters like Colossal Fighter or Stardust Dragon. We then play a single copy of the Phantom Knights of Shade Brigandine. Shade Brigandine is a good 1-of in this particular deck. So you can basically set this card to your side of the field, and if you don't have a trap in the graveyard, you can immediately activate this card to be able to special summon it as a level 4 with 0 attack and 300 defense. This card is great to be able to use as link material, and it's just a really good card overall in the deck. We then play a single copy of Phantom Knight Wings. This card is a really good 1-of in the deck because it helps you protect one of your monsters, because by activating this card, you can target a face-up monster on the field and it gains 500 attack. Also, the first time that target would be destroyed by battle or by card effect, this turn it is not destroyed. And you can banish this card from your graveyard and then target the Phantom Knight monster in your graveyard and special summon it, but banish it when it leaves the field, which is just going to help you get more monsters on the field. We then also play 3 copies of Fogblade. Fogblade is really good as a 3-of in this deck because this card is basically a Fiendish Chain, and it's super easy to establish 2 copies of this card on the very first turn. This card also, if it's in the graveyard, you can banish this card to be able to target a Phantom Knight monster in the graveyard and special summon it, which is a pretty good effect to just instantly get you a monster back on your side of the field. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to be playing 2 copies of Colossal Fighter. This card is such a cool old school boss monster that was released originally in one of the first decks ever released that was a structure deck for the Synchro era, which is just such a cool thing about this card. And this card gains 100 attack for every warrior monster in your graveyard, and when this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can target 1 warrior monster in either graveyard and special summon that target, which is a great effect just to replace itself on the field, but usually you're just using this card to go into your copy of its Assault Mode version. We then play a single copy of Stardust Dragon. Stardust Dragon is really good to be able to play in this deck because you can summon this card out to the field to give you a little bit of protection, or turn it into its Assault Mode version to give you a walking negate. We then play 2 copies of the Phantom Knight of Breaksword. This card is really good in the deck because it pops a card on our field and a card on our opponent's field, which is a great effect by just detaching a material from this card. We then play a single copy of Laminaire the Sea Dragon. This card is great in the deck, especially since your Phantom Knight monsters banish themselves. This card has the ability to once per turn detach the material from this card and then target one banished level 4 or lower monster and special summon that target to your side of the field, which is a pretty good effect to instantly put you a monster on the field. We then play a single copy of Downer Magician. Downer Magician is in the deck because we can summon out Zeus in this particular build extremely easily, and then we play a single copy of Zeus to go along with that copy of Downer Magician. It's just a really good card in this particular deck to board wipe the field just in case we need to. We then play a single copy of F-Zero. This card is great in this deck because it's super easy to make with a copy of Breaksword and our Laminaire the Sea Dragon. And then we play a single copy of Utopic Draco Future because we're going to make this card on top of it really easily with Breaksword and our copy of Laminaire the Sea Dragon. We then play a single copy of Access Code. Access Code is just really good in this deck overall to be able to pop multiple cards on the field, and it comes out absolutely massive. But we only have dark monsters in the extra deck for this card to be able to target in the graveyard, so we're only going to get 1 pop off this card, but it does close out games. We then play a single copy of Rusty Bardige. Rusty Bardige is really, really good in this deck, because this card basically is a Foolish Burial on summon for your Phantom Knight cards to be able to set a Phantom Knight spell or trap directly from your deck to your spell and trap card zone, which can be a copy of Fogblade. If you send Silent Boots to the graveyard off this card's effect, you'll get an additional Fogblade on the field by just banishing the copy of our Silent Boots from the grave, which is pretty good about this deck. We then play a single copy of Nightmare Unicorn to spin stuff. This card is just really good in the deck overall. 1 copy of IP Masquerena to make the copy of Unicorn during the opponent's turn. And then finally, a single copy of Cherubini. Cherubini is just really good in this particular deck because it helps you with your copies of your Phantom Knight monsters and your Burning Abyss cards, which is really cool. Usually what you do with this card is you normal summon out a copy of Tour Guide and then special summon Graph from the deck off of Tour Guide's effect, link into this card, and then once you do, the Graph will summon a Seer, and it will point to this card so it won't destroy itself. You can then link both of those monsters away to be able to make a copy of your Rusty Bardige, and then your copy of Graph will bring back the Cherubini to your side of the field, which is a great effect just to instantly get a Cherubini and your copy of Rusty Bardige. So, that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. This deck is super fun to be able to play. If you guys have never played Colossal Fighter Assault Mode, you should definitely give this deck a try because it's super fun to be able to summon that old school boss monster that just looks so good. And I love the gold rare version of this card because it just looks absolutely amazing. So, anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of the notification squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.